Josh gets all nervous. He don't like hearing himself talk.
No, dude. Now I'm like hypersensitive.
I thought the last one you sounded really good.
Is that because you're lying to me right before we start?
No, I had to sit there for 2 hours and listen to you talk over and over to make sure it was all good. And I was like, it's tolerable. It wasn't too bad.
Three really guys sitting in a room talking to each other through virtual reality as if we're in virtual reality as we're looking at each other. It feels weird, yeah.
So, exciting news. Mouzakis got his Stark Varg. So we got to go take that to Hangtown this last weekend, try that thing out. I got to throw a leg over it, which was really, really sweet. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. And then we also have a second guest, Austin Cantalini from Electro Co. He's got a little bit of insight with how the electric bikes work. I know to me it's kind of a caveman interpretation. It's like electric motor, throttle, go. And that's my understanding of it. And so he's going to kind of share some insight on that today. But thank you for letting me ride up the mountain. This is a pretty sweet place you got.
Oh, thank you so much. No, I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I would be happy too if I was.
I'm happy to be on the podcast. I should say.
Well, thank you. No, yeah, the dogs though. That's why, like I was just telling you earlier, because you have all these goats, and then you have that big dog out there. What kind of dog is it again?
It's a Kangal.
Yeah, like I was telling you earlier, I saw a bunch of YouTube videos of those things just ripping coyotes apart. And,
yeah, they're pretty. They have the strongest bite, and they're a livestock guardian dog is what they're known as, and they're he's a good boy, but just mind your P's and Q's.
Yeah, how old is he?
He's only 7 months right now, but it's going to be a journey because he's supposed to be over 100 pounds, up to 150. So
that's crazy.
Pretty, yeah. It's a new experience. The whole livestock guardian dog thing, very different than a regular house dog. But with all I'm having lots of new experiences ever since we moved up here to do the Electroland property, and it's I love the animals. Every new experience, yeah, I really do. So it's interesting.
The goats are like when we were driving up right now. Josh was telling me, he's like, dude, he's got these goats. It's awesome. And my wife and I, we have a cool yard. And so we think like, man, it'd be great to have goats, but we just couldn't because we have all these nice flowers and everything. Like,
they'd be gone.
All bad. Yeah. But the goats are cool. It's funny. So when I went out there to get the other mic boom, I went and I could hear the dog barking and stuff, and it didn't sound too far. And I was by myself, and I'm not gonna lie, like I'm so chicken shit when it comes to the strange dogs.
Sure. And
especially ones that are like guard dogs. So I left the door open, and then I ran to go get the boom, and then I run back in, and then I went to the restroom real quick. And as soon as I went, I could hear what's the other dog's name? The German Shepherd?
Max.
Max is like a big puppy dog, but he's a big ass German Shepherd. So I'm going in there to go to the restroom, and then I could hear him just through the window, and I got so nervous. But when I was a kid, we had a dog that's the same age as me, and he ended up he snapped at me pretty good when I was crawling, and it bit my face up.
Oh,
and
wow.
then
Yep.
My parents saw that, my dad saw it, went all primal on the dog, and so the dog hated me after that.
Sure.
Forever. Like straight up its whole lifetime. So when I was a little guy, and this is probably TMI, but when I was first getting like potty trained and everything, in the middle of the night you wake up and want to go to the restroom, the dog would sleep in the tile part of the restroom. So like the restroom was tile, and then the hallway was carpet. So the front half would be in the hallway, and then the back half would be in the tile because it was cool, and there was a nightlight right in front of it. So all you could see is the dog just sitting there. So I'd have to like sneak around it, walk like next to it to go to the toilet, and the whole time it'd just be snarling at me, and I'm like trying not to pee in my pants. Like it's pretty bad. Like it was a horrible thing. So that's why I am terrified of dogs. Like for the longest time I was, and then after what was it? Like he bit me a couple times when I was a kid, and it sucked. Sure. Bit me. And then I want to say I was in my 20s. I started going to like dog parks, and to like watch them and learn about them, and then like I love them. They're cool. You know, we've always had them growing up, but that one just like
Back of your mind for the rest of your life.
yeah. So, yeah, dude, even more traumatic. I'm using your restroom. Dogs all
His paws sticking under the door.
He's just waiting
breathing
for
like
me.
a bull.
You can still see the fear in your eyes every time you look at Stella.
Oh yeah. Enough about that. There's 5 minutes of my trauma. So, Electro Co. We talked about it a little bit last time on the last podcast that Josh and I did. So, kind of kit out the different motorcycles, whether it's the little small razor bikes and then some of the smaller 65 frames and everything. Get an electric motor in there and do a whole conversion kit. How long have you been doing that? What got you into all that?
Oh, well, okay. So I think we're about on year 4 now. This started a long time ago with me just seeing like an Alta on, you know, the internet. And I was huge into RC stuff. And I'm like, no way. An RC dirt bike that you can ride on. That's like what was going through my mind. And I just had to get one. So I ended up getting one. And got close to some of the Alta guys because they weren't too far. They were just there in San Francisco. And long story short, everybody knows they closed down. And after that happened, I was like, it's not over. I like this electric stuff a lot. And I was already really deep into the RC stuff. I had my own little side business. I worked at a hobby store when I was younger, in between being an adult and all that. And yeah, we just started building like a 65 as like our first bike because it seemed like an easier goal to hit, like to make a competitive kids bike rather than like a full-on race bike. Mm-hmm. And then in that process, it just ended up being like the world's funnest pit bike. And then I was like, okay, like maybe we have something here. Like we can do like electric pit bikes and electric kids bikes, and kind of kickstarted the whole business. So what Electro and Company has become is an electric powertrain manufacturer that is directly designing for the power sports industry, particularly dirt bikes, quads, and that kind of thing. So right now we have a lot of modifications for all kinds of existing bikes. One of our most popular kits is for razors. You can pick them up at like Walmart. Pretty good little frame. Really bad electronics and really bad suspension, brakes and all that. And then we provide all the parts that you can change that. Then we have a bunch of universal kits that you can build, you know, a 65, an 85, a full-size dirt bike, a go-kart, all kinds of stuff like that. And that's the gist of basically what we do. But in the grander scheme of things, we're looking to develop, and we already have several of our own controllers developed under the True Moto is what we call it, product line. And I could go on, but essentially we're trying to develop our own technology, and we're about halfway there. We have all the pit bike stuff. It works really cool. It's really exciting. And me and Josh are just now finishing up our YZ kit. That's a full bolt-on, and with that will come our full-size motocross controller that will be able to deliver similar to 450 or more power and have the full adjustability. So we kind of went from, you know, just working on like the little razors and the kids' bikes and the 65s to building powertrain parts in their entirety for full-size bikes now. That's where we're heading the next couple months. We'll be having that available. So
do you guys also, do you provide any customer, so like say if I came up and I said, hey, I have a CR 450F, or if I had a KX 450 or something like that, do you guys offer to do a custom electric conversion on stuff like that, or is that something maybe down the line?
So we don't do the building for the customer. We're more of the powertrain, like I said, manufacturer and provider. So if we don't have a kit specifically for your frame, which for a lot of those motocross frames we don't, you would buy the parts necessary to do that, and the only thing that'd be left up to the customer is just to like mount the motor and the battery, which is not the easiest, but not the hardest thing to do. You don't necessarily have to be a CAD designer or anything like that. You could do it with the jigsaw and, you know, just basic tools. But we are coming up like I said, with the YZ conversion, we're trying to find like the most popular and available frames and come out with things for those to make it accessible, at least in some sense, for the larger market rather than...
Yeah, because that's the big thing that I noticed. Like that YZ that you guys had built that Josh raced in Endurocross, you get on it, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but when you get on it, the electric bikes, they feel so damn good. And that's when we get into talking about the Varg, but just any that I've ever ridden, when they have a good controller, and that was something Josh explained to me, that's massive part of it is having a good controller.
Totally.
They feel like everything you're trying to tune your gas powered bike to be like.
Yes.
And to do it in a much less complex way, very simplified, in I mean, I guess we could jump into what it's like riding the Varg. You have a Varg, and yours was yours the first one that he raced on?
It was, yes.
Yeah. And so I mean, obviously you're all about it, but getting on that, like I don't ride a ton. I'm trying to ride a lot more. And I've rode mostly 2-strokes in motocross, and then I've ridden some 450 and 250F, but majority 2-stroke. So for me to get on something and it not feel foreign to me is, I think, almost a little bit of a bigger deal, because I'm not as accustomed. Whereas, if someone's riding all the time, you're just kind of bike fit. And I'm riding on older technology, where it's a little, the chassis is a little lighter on the terrain and everything. When I got on Josh's Stark, dude, that thing was like instantly, everything was easier.
Yes.
Everything. Yeah.
I feels like Josh wants to say something, but I guess my comment to that is, to me, as the powertrain, manufacturer and developer, it's our number one goal is to make the electric powertrain feel exactly like what you expect. And so that way you're not getting on the bike and learning something new. You're getting on the bike and you're like, this is everything that it's supposed to be and more.
Yes. It's like what you're looking for. And that's what I try to tell people. It's not overwhelming power. If you want power, it's there, but the power is there in a way that it makes sense. Where I've got on some of the smaller kind of cheap electric bikes, the little pit bikes that they make, and you get on it and you like almost loop out, or you slide off the back. You're like, holy cow, or it's got a ton of wheel spin and you can't get anywhere. That's when it's done wrong. But when it's done right, you get on it and you really don't have to think. Like I said, it's a sensation that you've been looking for. At least for me personally, that's what it feels like. To be able to go into a corner, not have to shift, not even have to worry about where my foot's placed there to shift or worry about any of that. Just go and keep it where it needs to be. And then not have to worry about the clutch, not have to worry about the RPMs, not have to worry about stalling, not have to worry about stabbing the brake, any of that stuff. You could just go and focus on, hey, that line looks pretty good. And then you set into it and you roll on smooth on the throttle, and it's the amount of power you're looking for. You keep your balance, no problem. Let's be a little progressive, roll on the throttle, and it goes the amount that you want it to go. Whether it be a deep corner, a dry corner, whatever, it's so intuitive. And that's what blew me away, is just how easy. Within like 3 corners, I felt that. And mind you, how much does a Stark weigh? Or Varg?
260 and some change.
Is that what they actually weighed out to?
Yeah, low 260s.
Is that full battery or no?
I would love to weigh them in grams. See if you could weigh electrons. That would be.
But what I'm getting at though is, I ride a YZ125 all the time. And it's like a BMX bike. Anytime I get on my buddy's 450, It always feels like a handful. And I get arm pump just in anticipation of it being a handful, and like nerves and shit. Yeah. But then the Varg, you get on it, it doesn't feel all that heavy. Maybe if it gets kicked sideways here and there, but the lack of inertia kind of lets it fall back in line a lot easier. Like everything about it blows my mind. And as much as I like at core, like, dude, I'm riding 2-strokes. You know what I mean? Like, sure. I'm still like,
I'm premix. I'm right there with you.
You know what I mean?
I love 2-stroke. Yeah.
But if you put me on a track, I want to ride the best that I can. Right. And that is, for the time being right now, the equipment is so impressive how much easier it is to ride. Like, even if I couldn't even tell you what the chassis felt like, or the suspension, because it was doing everything else so good that I'm not even, I couldn't tell you if it was handling crappy or not, because it just felt so good to ride.
Sure.
You know what I mean? I was doing everything else so much better than I normally do that's, we'll get there down the line. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
Blew my mind.
Just like an I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can't you tell?
Yeah. No, well, for me, I do it every day. I don't even have a gas bike anymore, which is like basically against the law. For when people try it for the first time, if it's done right, there shouldn't be any thinking involved. There shouldn't be any learning curve. There shouldn't be any of that. It should do exactly what you expect it to every single time right away. And it should be like your hand is wired right in, your brain is wired right into the bike, really, not even your hand.
Yeah, like the bike's an extension of you.
Totally.
Yeah.
And it's with electric, you can, if you do it right, and that all comes from the brain, the controller, more or less. And if you nail it, then you can ride longer because you get less pump. You make less mistakes. The power is smoother. You have more traction. All of that. And if you do it wrongly, then it just feels really, really bad. So it's just one of those things where you would think, like, you get on a Yamaha, you get on a CR, you get on a Suzuki or anything like that. They all feel different. Obviously, there's chassis differences. You have motor differences. You're going to see that in the electric industry as well. Mm-hmm. People are going to have their own idea of what it's supposed to feel like, and that comes from the brain. So you are going to have different sensations with these different brands. So it will be interesting. And the Stark is fairly reminiscent of Alta in the way that it feels, but it's not exactly the same. And I have some comments on that, but they did a really, really good job. We have a couple here. We use that as a yardstick. We use my Alta as another yardstick to make sure that we're doing things right. You can't argue with the big dogs, especially when they work so good. And
the testament to your guys' equipment, your guys' pit bikes are freaking rad. Like, he brought that Razor that he just built up.
Yeah.
So easy to ride. It makes sense. The only complaint I got is, like, we got to get a gripper seat on that thing, because
it's ripping you off the back.
It slid right off. But no, if the thing rides, it's funny. You don't expect it to be as fast as it is, because you probably hit like highway speed maybe on that thing,
60 plus. Yeah,
I wouldn't be surprised. But
sure.
Yeah, we're talking. Just Google like Razor pit bike, and that's what they put one of these in. That too, though, as fast as it is, it's really, really easy to ride. Like, if I was going to teach, my wife wanted to learn how to ride and just putt around or something like that, so easy.
You remember we put CJ, our QC guy, had never ridden a motorcycle before, ever. That was his first time. I just brought the power down way lower, brought the acceleration down, and he hopped on that thing just fine and was able to just go around the parking lot, no problem.
Yeah, the app, because you guys have an app for that to go and control everything. And it's like, literally, you have a kid on there, okay, let's bring it down a notch, and then it's
exactly
super rad.
Yeah, the TrueMoto app, you get to adjust the power, torque, throttle aggressiveness, regenerative braking, which is engine braking in gas terms, and the Stark has that. And so what's kind of interesting with saying that is you don't have to, you can buy one bike and work your way into the power, whereas before, it would be a terrible idea for someone that's learning to buy a 450.
I never even thought about that.
But now you don't have to worry about that. You buy the best bike there is, and you grow into it, and so it grows with you.
I didn't even think about that. That's a good point.
It's a game changer in that regard, for sure.
Yeah. What did you think when you rode the Stark, Josh, over in Spain? What did you think to ride your own equipment at a track you're really familiar with? Like, how did it feel to you?
The first thing I noticed was that it seemed like they dialed in the suspension a little bit better. So we talked before, the one that I rode in Spain was a little bit stiff in the back and soft on the forks. And that kind of threw me off a little bit. This bike seemed a lot more balanced right out of the box. So I would assume they made either some spring or valving changes there. And, it was pretty close. You saw I didn't mess with clickers much during the day. I changed rebound a little bit, and that was about it. But really being able to have it be my own bike and really focus on that. It wasn't just a bike I was borrowing and could run like one battery and then maybe have to jump on another bike. This one I was able to do 20 minutes, come back, charge the battery up, do another 20 minutes, and really kind of feel things out. But I mean, I was, like you said, I mean, I got on and I felt comfortable right away. I mean, you've seen me ride my 250, my YZ250, and you've seen me ride this bike. I mean, how much faster do you think I was immediately on this bike?
Pretty fast. You look good. You look super, super comfortable. Like, and that was, especially in the air, too. Like, Josh ain't got no style in the air. But he had a lot of style that day. I always crack up at Josh. Josh is super, everything he does on the bike is like functional. You know what I mean?
Sure.
It's like matches, his riding style matches his personality. It's like perfectionist and like everything's got to be balanced and make sense and logical and all this shit.
It's one of the better backhanded compliments I've ever heard.
But he goes and gets on the Varg and like I think I got there was the second session for you, and then I'm pumped up first lap and I just pulled off.
Sure.
I'm with my buddy Eric and we're watching Josh because I want to see how it looks and I get a kick out of seeing how someone's suspension is working.
Totally.
And then if the bike looks balanced and whatnot. Because, dude,
Same.
I don't think enough people do that. And
Same.
you could make your day so much better if you go like 4 clicks one this way or one direction, 4 clicks this direction. See if this helps at all. Like that's set your sag and mess with your clickers every once in a while.
Yeah.
You would be amazed at how much better your bike will feel. It's like, oh, that's what it's supposed to feel like.
Sometimes that's hard to see too, or feel when you're on the bike.
1,000%.
Someone watching.
Like
you.
having someone watch you, and that's something I learned from you. Like I'm trying to sit there and like feel things. I'm like, oh, I think it's doing this. I think I'm doing that. And then you would watch and you're like, no, dude, it's doing this. You know? And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I can adjust for that. I'm like, oh, it's better.
Yeah. Well,
like sometimes it's hard to know if you're not watching from the third person from the outside.
And we try to, I always try to tell everybody, like, take a video. Have your friend take a video on a rough part, in a corner, on a jump, where the G-outs are and everything. Just, and it's not that you're gonna, you just want to make sure that the bike is balanced. And then you want to make sure that the rate that the rear end and the front end, like the rate that they're going through the travel, is also balanced.
Totally.
And it's not, I'm not a suspension guy. We talk to suspension guys and I'll ask more questions then, but that's the basic thing that it's not going to hurt.
Sure.
You know? And then watching Josh ride, because that was one of the biggest things I was curious about, watching Josh ride, it looked well within the ballpark. It was for sure balanced. You know, it looked like it was a little off on clickers for the conditions that day, but the track wasn't in that great a shape for the day. It was kind of funky, like real almost crusty on the surface, like where the cushion would be. All that was all chunky and crusty.
Sure.
Like super early in the day though, and then they threw some water and it got better. But watching him ride around, like he looked comfortable, and like I said, Josh trying to throw a little sauce on there, and it was for every lap, dude. It was the same jump. It was like
Slightly saucier as the lap goes by.
It looked more like BMX style. It looked pretty good because, you know, he does all his flips and stuff on the bicycles. Same thing. Like look like bikes all cocked, boner air, and then like nose down, like gonna nose wheelie the landing like every lap. But it looked comfortable. It looked pretty sweet. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie.
This guy's crazy. Like we'll be on the way up to, we were on our way up to Big Hill Jam. Mm-hmm. He has to stop at the bike park before a hill climb race and do a couple little sesh or whatever, break up his drive. I'm like, dude, you're gonna break your damn leg before you get up to this race. He's like, nah, man, I'm good. Gets up there. Then we're like, you know, just this goes back to what you're saying earlier about how get on the bike. It's super easy to ride. Josh was looking good. And I'm like, ride this Stark. This guy's never, just the only time he rode it was in Barcelona. No, and then didn't even do it
beforehand.
Months beforehand.
Like 3 months ago.
No warm up. Just, okay. And then just makes top 8 with all the pros on it. And I'm like, yeah, it's, Josh has got some pretty good steeds there.
Varg is just a hell of a bike is what it is.
A very good bike. It's a little combination of the two there.
Oh, that's rad. But what else was your takeaway on your own bike?
The big thing, I guess, other than suspension, was I kind of left the motor the same, or power setting the same. So when I was in Barcelona, I set about 55 horsepower for the track, and I think I was at 60% regen. And that was good. I basically rode that all day. One of the interesting things, though, our first ride was actually a trail ride. So me and Austin and a few other guys went up to Georgetown. That's just like a local like forest area we can ride up in Northern California. And we had 4 Vargs there that day, which I'm claiming a world record. It might not hold, but I think it's a world record outside of a dealer event.
At least
for now. But when we went out there and we were kind of trail riding and just breaking the bikes in and stuff, I actually ended up running higher power setting in the trails. So I was running 70 horsepower in the trail system, only because when you're riding trails, like I'm used to a 2-stroke, right? You're used to a 2-stroke. Keeping that front end light is important. You need to be able to pop up over rocks, logs, roots, whatever you might encounter. And this bike is so smooth, and it works well on the motocross track because it's so smooth. You almost want a little bit more off-road. So that's where that 70 horsepower setting came in, because you don't have that torque adjustment yet through the phone app, and I think that's coming at some point, but we don't have it yet. So running that 70 horsepower, you gain a little bit of bottom end. So I was running it there just to be able to keep that front end light kind of pop up over things. But a testament to it being smooth, it wasn't getting away from me. Like I could ride 70 horsepower in the trails and be fine. Like I didn't think it was going to get away from me. I didn't have any sketchy moments with it. Like it was totally good. So that was kind of interesting to play with, because we didn't really get to trail ride much in Barcelona. We did like a few little screwing around on stuff outside the track, but not a lot. But it's a pretty capable woods bike, I would say. And I mean, yeah, I don't know. I feel like people could hop on this bike and ride trails and be totally comfortable. We did 22 miles on half a battery, basically.
Yep.
So pretty
All
good.
Was battery conservation a thought in your mind with the way you were riding?
No.
Not at all. I mean, we're talking pretty tight woods trails. Okay. This isn't like GNCC type stuff or like desert stuff where you're going fast. This is pretty tight, like second gear trails, maybe on a gas bike, that type of thing.
How did it feel different than your gas bike as far as like handling and the weight of it and all that kind of stuff at lower speed?
At lower speed, you feel the weight more. So something that I noticed immediately is if you don't want to get tired, you need to use your legs. So you should be doing that no matter what. I mean, kind of proper technique is steering the bike with your legs. You're weighting the pegs one way or another as you're kind of switching left to right and leaning the bike. If you don't do that with this bike, you're going to get tired on your arms and upper body quickly just because of the weight. And it doesn't, I don't think it feels any worse than a 450, but most people aren't riding 450s in the forest like that. But if you ride it correctly and you're using your legs and everything, it's really not so bad. You just need to adjust your technique or use proper technique and you'll be just fine. Not having to deal with the clutch or shifting or anything in that woods scenario is awesome.
Yeah, I think
it's great.
That's probably the biggest, again, it simplifies everything. So then you could focus on your technique. Like that's a major thing I noticed on the track was just with cornering. I have way better technique because I'm not having to manage the clutch, shifting, foot position, all of that stuff. Exactly. As far as going from shifting position to on the balls of your feet, you know.
That's another big thing is not when you have the regen braking like that, a lot of corners out on the trail, you're not needing to actually use the rear brake heading into it. You can just kind of chop the throttle and let it engine brake. That frees up your feet to be on the balls of your feet where you should be and not have to cover the brake and clutch. So that's huge in being able to use that that foot technique, like I was saying, to kind of steer the bike and not have to move them. How
do you feel with the regen setting that you were running? What do you think it was comparable? You said it was at 60?
Yeah, I was running at 60.
And what do you think it's comparable to? Do you think it felt like a 4-stroke or 2-stroke or
I'd say maybe like a 250 4-stroke. Okay. It's not... It's probably a little more than like a YZ250 2-stroke, but not as much as a 450. Does that sound about right to you, Austin?
I run mine at about 50, my Stark at about 50%, and I would perceive that to be about a YZ250 2-stroke. So you're running 60, that makes sense. Yeah, a little bit more.
Probably about right then.
Yeah.
And then what's the range? Is it a percentage? So like 100% is full regen or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's not like 100%. It's not like your rear wheel locks up. You know, there's a range. Mm-hmm. They're giving you a range to play with basically. So 100%. I don't know exactly how all that works, but
you'd have to ask the engineers of what they imagine that would feel like. But to me, I haven't even turned mine all the way up, but I would imagine it's got to be somewhere near what a 450 feels like. I don't like that much, so you're not going to see me sliding it all the way up. But the way that Stark has curated the app is a similar idea to how we curate our app, which is no matter where you put the slider, it's not going to be improper, I guess. So I would expect that 100% would be somewhere around a 450, maybe a little bit more just to add a little extra.
And does that regen help with battery life?
Yeah, so I would say in theory, yes, absolutely. It does. Every time you're off the throttle, you get that engine brake sensation. That's energy going back into the back. However, it depends on your situation. It's probably a negligible amount. I don't think you're going to like run longer. You know, you're not going to be like, dude, I got 2 more laps. Like, I don't think it's going to happen like that. Maybe in like a trail situation where you climbed a long way and then you went downhill a lot and you were conscientious of that and you were intentionally staying off the throttle and coasting a lot downhill, then you might get a few more miles, but it's not going to like change your life. It's more of like a ride feel thing. And I would say the same thing about our controller. With our controller, you can adjust the power and the regen, but you can also adjust the torque, which right now the Stark is lacking. But I believe they will adjust. They'll add that in there.
Yeah, that was a cool thing when we had our buddy ride it. Josh was just showing me, like, look how simple this is. Imagine if you had a kid that wanted to learn how to ride. Like, you just go drop the torque here, go ride it, and you go get on. Like, yeah, this is what you expect.
Yeah, exactly. Manageable. Yeah. So, yeah, I agree with Josh, too, about it being pretty soft. It's like, I'm sure on the track. I'm not a track guy. I'm more of like a woods guy. And so I find myself riding in a much higher power level than I would normally, but it's still completely manageable. It actually feels great. But it would be pretty cool if we could have, and in electric, this will probably come with the Stark, and all electric bikes will probably likely have this as ours already does, like our True Moto stuff, where you could have a lower power setting and high torque and make it completely adjustable to whatever scenario which you're encountering.
That's so rad.
Interestingly enough, too, I don't think this would extrapolate to like a motocross or like track scenario, but when we were out on the trail, I mean, I was running mine 60 to 70 horsepower. Some of our buddies were running them at 30 to 40, right?
30 or 40. Mm-hmm.
And we got basically the same range. So we were within a couple battery percent of each other after 22 miles. So it made basically no difference whatsoever in range. In a trail scenario, what power level you were at. So trying to run like a lower power to get more range if you're riding like slow trails, kind of pointless.
I could extrapolate on why that is.
Please.
Okay, sure. So, like, this is one of those things where, like Josh pointed out, on the trail, right? So on the track, when you're on the throttle hard all the time, so you're giving it full beans, you're depleting the maximum energy at whichever you're telling it, 40, 50, 60, 70 horsepower. In electric world, this would be kilowatts, but in terms of Stark, they just calculate it out to horsepower. So if you're demanding 40, you're 40 for all 10, 15 seconds down the straight, then you're off it, then you're all 40 horsepower down the next, short section. So versus on trails, you're demanding whatever it takes to go 12 miles per hour. And that doesn't matter what the peak power is that you have set in the app or on your controller in this instance. You're only going to demand what your hand is demanding. And it doesn't matter the maximum level at which you have set it to. So even though Josh has a 70 horsepower tune, I'm running 50. A couple of my buddies are running 30 and 40. We have various skill levels. Josh is only able to demand that 70 horsepower for maybe 1 or 2 seconds, where I might demand 50 horsepower for 3 seconds. And then it kind of just equals out because we're all going 15 or 20 miles per hour, on the trail. And then it just kind of ends up boiling to end up being the same thing because it's not about what the controller can do. It's about what you're actually asking it to do.
What you're using.
What you're using, actually.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
That's interesting, man. It's cool to kind of unbox all of the little nuances, and there's the stuff you think it might do, and it ends up just doing a bunch of good shit, man.
Yeah,
really, really cool
for sure. But conversely, if you rode like a 30 horsepower tune on the track versus a 70, and both riders were on it, it would totally affect the battery life.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah, because you're on it the whole time, so you are demanding that full power.
That makes sense.
Plus, at some point, I mean, you have to factor in like fatigue level too. If you're running, I don't know who's going to run 70 horsepower on the track. If they do, that's amazing. You're going to get tired so quick. I mean, that's.
Did you try? Did you try going up in your tire pressure in your? Wow, Anthony, I can't. A1 can't. Yeah, A1 can't get here soon enough, guys. Did you try running your power higher that day at the track or no?
I kept it at 55 all day. I was more interested that day in just feeling the bike out, kind of playing with suspension a little bit, making sure it was balanced and breaking it in. I wasn't too worried about the power. It was honestly more of like an exploratory day for me of being able to play around with it. And like you said, I was trying to jump a little bit differently. Like I was intentionally doing stuff way more nose down than I would ever feel comfortable on a gas bike, just because maybe I've endoed BMX bikes and stuff too many times, and I'm terrified of that thing cutting out in the air and just spitting me over the front off like a huge tabletop or something. So I'm usually pretty level, but the Stark, right. I can go nose down and like not care, and just get to the point where I'm like panicking in the air and not comfortable anymore and just give it a little throttle and it's fine. Yeah. All is well.
It was like the attitude of the bike was like the same as what you would see like when somebody's goon riding, but it looked like style. Like it looked like I'm trying to
I can't tell if you're insulting me or
not.
No,
I'm not. Like it was ridiculous is what I'm saying. Like the amount that you're able to move the bike in the air, because on gas bikes it always looks like this momentum, like this very graceful change in momentum, right? Where you just go crank it one way and it keeps going and then they bring it back, but it looks like this almost like a cursive signature. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Where what Josh was doing was like, it looked like when a kid has an action figure and they're just like going over the couch
like
and
a puppet on a string.
Yeah. And then they're just cranking it and then, but like not erratically, but like quick change in direction. Like there's no momentum. It's all just like or forward. But he was doing, but his posture on the bike was not goon riding. So it just looked like when a kid's dirt jumping in BMX and just cranking it over. It was cool to see. It was so different. You don't really ever see anybody ride like that.
It's totally an electric thing, and this happens because you have the entire speed range of the back tire at demand of your right hand. So that's like going 3, 4, 5, 6 while you're in the air.
Yeah. And
getting that wheel speed, but without having to do any gear change. So he can get a 90 mile per hour rear wheel speed like that versus, you're basically locked in whatever gear you're in, fourth, and then you get, we don't have that. Well, our rev limiter is like 90 miles an hour every time, right? So if he comes in nose down, he should be able to pull it up super easy in comparison to a gas bike.
Absolutely looked like it. Yeah, that was really cool to see, and it was just so different. And then everybody was. It was funny because everybody was pulling off, and like it's not that they heard a start go by. They didn't hear a start go by, but they saw one, and so everybody was like, "Oh shit!" And then they go and they would pull off, and then there's just people standing on that or kind of off to the side like pylons, as he's going through. And it's like, damn, it's actually. Bike looks pretty good.
Josh's head grew 3 sizes bigger that day.
Yeah, I'm helping him.
I told Anthony I need a new helmet.
Yeah, I gotta get him. I gotta text my buddy and let him know that we're gonna have to bump the size up just a smidge.
That does bring up a point, though. People are very oblivious on the track. So which we kind of knew this going in. Mm-hmm. It's a little surprising to me though, because even like when I was growing up and getting faster. I always knew I didn't need noise. I feel like I always knew where people were. Like if I'm going up a straightaway, like I'm watching what's happening out the corner of my eye on the straightaway behind me, and I know if someone really fast is coming up or something. Apparently, a lot of people don't do that because there were people completely oblivious that I was anywhere near them, and not that they were like doing erratic things, but just not getting out of the way at all, or just not doing things you would expect.
Living their own life.
Yeah, they're like in their own little world, and I'm like, how are you guys doing this on a motocross trail? I guess we're all just like so used to being able to hear and relying on that.
Yeah,
but I don't know. People are going to have to use their eyes a little bit also.
See, I don't get any of that because I'm not passing anybody, so I just make sure I go straight and Josh don't land on my ass, and we're having a good day.
We're gonna have to get you like a little horn.
No,
There we go.
The bicycle bell. No, but it was really cool to be out there and see it. And what did you feel? So one thing that I noticed was it didn't suck down into the terrain as much as what like a 4-stroke would do, and it didn't really feel like it tracked a whole lot. Not in a bad way. Like I said, it was more familiar to almost kind of the feel that you get from like a YZ250. Where the chassis was a little more loose. You could kind of glide over stuff a lot easier. It didn't get sucked down into anything deep. I mean, the conditions that weren't that permissible to that, you wouldn't really get a whole lot of that anyways, but it just didn't feel bogged down at all. Everything felt loose. Not the bad kind of loose either. Nothing felt bound up on it.
No, you're right. It comes into corners very free.
Yes.
But it's controlled and it's planted, and you can push the front end hard. You get a lot of front end traction out of this bike. And that's something coming off the YZ250. You don't get that bike. I don't feel like you get a lot of front traction out of that bike. Maybe it's part of my setup, but the 2-strokes in general, you just don't get the front end traction or the plantedness that you get out of a 4-stroke.
Yeah.
The Stark, it's almost like you get that light feel of the 2-stroke coming in, but it feels planted like the 4-stroke in the corner, and you're not getting like kicked around in braking bumps or anything. And you also have that front end traction that you can kind of lean on to get going, especially if there's a corner that's off camber, there's not a good rut. Because we got some ruts that day, not enough though. That track's kind of hit or miss depending on the prep, whether you get ruts or not. So there are quite a few corners where you're kind of banking off of nothing or not much, and I felt like I could trust the front end a lot on that bike and feel comfortable.
Yeah, that's a good point to say. It doesn't feel as planted in the straightaways or on the gas or even kind of in some parts of the corner, but definitely cornering, it feels way more stable.
Yeah,
way more stable.
And you also don't have, coming out of corners and down straightaways, you don't have the pause of the gear change to upset the chassis. So if you're on a 2-stroke and you're coming out of a corner, the way I ride, I'm like usually a gear higher than everyone else in a lot of areas of the track. That's just my riding style and how I grew up riding, I guess. I don't know. But so I'm having to upshift coming out of corners quite a bit sometimes. Like I'll try to carry a gear high, but then also upshift early. So I'm not having to shift down the straightaway and stuff. But that can upset your chassis and suspension coming out of a corner, especially if there's a lot of chatter bumps. When you're on the Varg and you don't have those gears, you can just be steady on the throttle and roll it on smoothly, and now your chassis is not upset. You're just kind of tracking down the straightaway. It's not doing anything weird. You don't have that momentary lift and pause that's unloading the rear shock like you normally had when you're shifting. Because even if you're not using the clutch and you're just banging a gear, you still have to chop the throttle. There's still that momentary pause that kind of upsets the bike to some degree. With the Varg, you don't have that because it's like a jet ski. You just point and go. There are no gears to do that.
Simplified. Big time. I'm trying to think of any of the other stuff that kind of blew me away. Oh, one thing. When you had said with the tires, the stock tires trail riding, that you noticed them moving around a bit. What tire? Do you know what tire pressure you're running
when we trail rode? This was with the stock tires. They come with Pirellis and those really thin stock tubes that they have, the lightweight ones.
Yeah.
I ran 15 PSI front and rear. And even that, the rear tire felt fine. The front tire seemed like it was getting a lot of roll. So you'd come around corners and you would feel like a little unsteady. You could almost feel the tire rolling over on the rim. But you would also blow through the tire. Like if I hit a rock or a root or something, you could feel it blow through and actually, like, it was hard.
I didn't say anything, but I'm glad you're saying it now because I bashed my rim multiple times, and that was with 15 pounds, and I was like, dude, maybe some leaked out. I guess not. So.
That's one thing I was curious about, because when I saw them, just as a tire guy, when I saw them show the tube that they're going to use, my interpretation with it being so lightweight, like it's cool. That's a cool idea if that's the goal. Like that's you definitely achieve that goal. But there's almost, this is just my opinion. Okay, this isn't I don't know that I'm the most educated on it, but it's more of an experience thing. But there's a certain point of like diminishing returns with going lightweight, and that's in everything. And what happens is you start losing consistency and stability, and the tires as they're manufactured today are made for 4-stroke applications. They work on 2 strokes. And even like the profile, like if you go from say like a 120 90 and a 120 80, and then you go to a 110 90, like the carcass construction is different because of the application, because it's going to be the application of the power and the weight of the chassis, all that kind of stuff. That's all something that's bared in mind. And if you go look at the electric stuff, it almost seemed like there was a concern for weight. I don't know if that's maybe the battery life, because making sure you get as much as you can out of it. But if there was one fault of how the bike comes, I would say I wasn't a huge fan of the tubes. I don't know on the durability side. I mean, they seem, for being as light as they are, it's impressive that they are durable. I will say they're durable for as thin as they are. That's pretty incredible how thin they are. But is it the best application? I don't know. And I'm curious to see if tires get designed specific for electric bike applications. Just like when you go into off-road and they have, like I know Dunlop has a RC, which is going to be a stiffer carcass for higher speed and G-outs and stuff like that. And because it takes a lot more abuse. But it's the same design, but it's a different carcass. You know what I mean? And I almost think that you might have to have that on an e-bike, because we put a Dunlop front, which had a much stiffer carcass than the stock tire that came on the bike. And a lot of that consistency was boom, right there, back to where we wanted. And it was one of our stiffer carcasses too. That's one thing I'm curious about. We have a couple other tires I want to try and see how they are, and see like what, in Josh's opinion, what he liked the most. He's the faster one of us. Sure. Like I'm like, oh yeah, it holds there. But I mean, like
super stiff.
Yeah,
it's the stiffest.
Well, because the thing, you can compensate with tire pressure, but there's only a certain window of where that works. Like as you go up in tire pressure, you're going to have the progression on when it squishes. Totally. It's going to start deflecting if you go too high. So eventually you want the carcass to do its job. So there's a certain sweet spot, and so we usually, I know at like the races, we recommend, like on the MX-34, we recommend like at least 13.5 pounds, and it keeps it consistent profile. So that's like the fastest guys in the world racing Supercross. A lot of times it's 13.5 in the front, right? But they'll go up from there if they want more out of the tire. You know what I mean? It's not uncommon to see guys run 14.5, sometimes even 15 from time to time. But that's a preference, because that's the interface of what you feel through the handlebars, through the suspension. You feel it in your hands, and everybody has a different feel that they're looking for. And it's, you think of the front tire like the blade of like a knife's edge, just cutting through the terrain, and a lot of guys have a different, what they're expecting is different. From rider to rider. And so that's one big thing that, and I don't know, I'm sorry if I'm boring any of the listeners right now, but I don't know if I was so jazzed with the power and how easy it was to ride that I couldn't tell you what the weight bias felt like or anything. Cause even, like I said, even if it was off, it did everything else so well that I didn't notice. Sure. Because it felt so damn good. Sure. But I don't know what that does to, like, say if it has a front end weight bias, like a lot more than a typical 4-stroke, then that's a lot more load, on the front tire. Or maybe it's further back, and maybe it's not as bad, and maybe it's a wash. I have no idea. Sure. That's stuff like it. We're still, what was it? That was 2 rides in for you. That was my first time ever being around one in person. Sure. And so it's kind of, we'll get more information about that and see where it goes. But that's, so everybody's on the same page. Like, that's where my brain's at, and kind of when I geek out, and at least in my little realm of how shit works, I have an Alta. I got like 400 hours on it, and it's pretty nose heavy. That you get on it and you're like,
I know right away that it's nose heavy. But it runs good. You get on the Stark, it feels a lot more normal. So I think like one of those sayings that I like is, you know, if you've done something right, then you won't be sure you've done anything at all. So
I've done a lot of shit right, bro. Let me tell you. My wife will tell you I do everything right.
But it's like
my whole team, dude. If my buddies at Dunlop are listening to this, they're like, "Oh, he does everything right."
He just unlocked the key to his entire life.
Dude,
he's having a moment right now.
It's an epiphany.
I'm telling you though, like in the context, right, is like you got on there and you're like, I didn't even notice. It's probably pretty close to being right then, or it's very right, and, you know, because you would notice if it was wrong, I think. So my experience is that it's a little bit more, the weight is more back than the Alta, but I ride a lot of electric, so you'd have to defer to Josh to compare it, but I think it's pretty on par, right? The weight distribution right now.
Yeah, I feel like they're pretty close to like standard gas bikes. The interesting thing that's probably going to change a little bit, and I need more time on the bike to really probably speak to it, is the actual like weight transfer. So when you're accelerating and when you're braking, how much the bike dives or kind of G's back under acceleration and how much it dives forward when you're braking, things like that. And that's a suspension thing, but that's all going to matter. But I feel like these bikes, maybe it's a weight bias thing, maybe it's a suspension setup. I feel like they do put a lot of weight on the front wheel still. Yeah, I do feel like that is a little bit of an electric thing, because I feel that on the pit bikes too. Yeah, there's something to it, and it's going to take more time to kind of sort that out. But I think that's where we're probably going to need maybe some stiffer front tires, like we talked about. And even if on the scale the weight bias isn't forward, we need to weigh it to tell. But I feel like compared to a gas bike, maybe it is a little more front heavy, or at least has that sensation.
I think so. A little bit more,
even if it doesn't show on the scale.
See, but here's the other thing.
At least it feels like it.
Here's the other thing that we don't even consider is on a gas bike, you have how much fuel you put in it in the beginning of a moto and how much fuel it has at the end of a moto. So that's another significant amount of weight that's going up and down. So then is that not quite as big as a deal? Because like there's a sweet spot window. Could you make it to where it's more consistent now? You know, there's a bunch of shit like that you just like, we keep peeling back the layers.
Well, to be clear too, like, the heavy front end for me is an asset. Like, I'm a front end steering rider. I can steer with the rear wheel if I need to, but I would prefer to rely more on the front. Mm-hmm. Like, front end feel is everything to me. Back end, not as important. So having that extra weight, and I didn't even mind the Alta. Like, the Alta is very front end heavy. That was okay to me. I would deal with deal with the consequences of that, to have that comfort on the front end, to be able to push the front end a little bit harder. And the Stark's kind of there, but just not quite. Like, I almost feel like you have that to some degree, but not a lot of the drawbacks.
Sure. Yeah, the Stark has a really light feeling front end, while I think you mentioned this earlier, while somehow still maintaining a very positive traction feeling through the corner. But
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, it's...
you can lighten the front end, like on the straightaways and stuff where you want it light, but you still have it there coming into a corner. The front end traction is there.
Yeah. Despite it still feels very light on the nose to me. But that's... like, it's hard for me because I'm always... I'm about 400 hours into an Alta, and I'm like, those are like really steering with the front, which Josh loves that, but... I'm in love with the Stark. I love to steer with the back end. So I think it's a good compromise between where the Alta is, where my gas bikes were that I had in the past, which I had many, and where the Stark is at now. I think it's pretty good.
I mean, I guess that kind of speaks to the versatility right there then. With you liking to steer with the back, me wanting to steer with the front, we're both happy with it.
We're both happy. Yeah.
They did do it right, apparently.
Well, I mean, in order to steer with the rear, you have a stable front, a predictable front.
Right. True. I mean? Yeah.
And I think that's why, like, to your style specifically, I think you're more comfortable with the front being stable, making sure it's stable, and you have such good throttle control that you're not worried what the rear is going to do, because you can respond well to it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And not we're somebody who's a little bit more heavy-handed. They're going to need more stability in the rear because they're a little more inconsistent on the throttle input.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because I mean, I do a lot of low speed trail riding or like endurocross type stuff, so throttle controls everything there, so that kind of goes hand in hand with the track. Obviously, you're a little more ham-fisted on the track, but that feel is still the same.
So how do you guys think, just with whether it be a guest that you guys had, or like how would you see, like, I don't know any rumblings about whether or not Stark's going to go racing or when they're going to go racing. I think right now the big goal would probably be to get what they built and get their inventory out in people's garages, and get it into people's hands and get people riding on the track and whatnot. I think that would be the first goal. But with racing, like, I don't want to see a spec class, because I want to see it, how it stacks up, and where if I'm going to go riding, I think gas bikes are fun because of the way that everything about it is fun. But when you look at how technology goes, especially like in cars, you don't really get manual cars anymore. Right. All of them are paddle shifting, and all that kind of stuff. And it's just because it's more efficient, it's more effective if you're purely going for the fastest lap time. And I'd like to see, when it comes to outright performance, like, guys listening, if you're on the fence about these electric bikes, you gotta at least feel one. Like, just go ride one, and if you hate it, all good, no worries, but just try it out, because at the end of the day, it's two wheels with a motor that's making it haul ass, and it feels so damn impressive. And it's not, like I said, it's not something that's alien in a way where you're getting on something that feels unfamiliar. It feels like how you want it to feel.
Yes.
And so to go racing on that, is I'm just thinking, like, how simplified things would be. Like, does racing get better? Is the Stark potentially a standout? Is there certain shit that is going to happen with, here's a perfect example. And not trying to put anybody on blast on this one. Obviously, I work with a lot of wheel sets, right? So I see the top guys in the world, their wheel sets, what the factory teams are running, and what the guy that can barely afford to be at the races, what they're using for their equipment. Okay. And majority of the time, the top pros, what they're doing is they're taking the stock wheels off, and they're putting something that's stronger and more durable on, so that way they could go race supercross, go race motocross, because they beat the hell out of them. And that's the same reason why we would run Moose during outdoors, is you don't want to have to think about, I hope I don't have a failure here. Like, I hope I don't have a flat. Those guys are championship contention. Like, they don't want to have to worry about that. So not a whole lot of guys are saying, I want a Moose because it feels better and I like that dead feeling. No, they're not going for that. They're saying, I don't want to have to think about that. Yes. And I have to run this in order to make sure I could keep up with that guy right there and not have to worry. So when they change their wheel sets out, a lot of guys are running stronger wheel sets because they're more reliable, less odds of failure. One thing I did notice with the Varg is that the wheels are pretty light. I would have to weigh them to make sure I'm not starting rumors or nothing, but just in my hands, they felt really light, but they felt like everything was, they felt different than anything that I've ever changed a set of tires on. And I don't know how durable those things are going to be. And one thing that I would be concerned about is the weight of the bike itself. And if you're going to really ride it hard, like, obviously it makes the power, so it's going to load them, right? And guys are going to jump big stuff on them. Yep. And I'd want them to hold up, but I'm curious about, I would want to pay attention to, like, I want to get your wheels and like spec out the spokes and see if the spokes are any thinner, because everything just seemed like it was to save weight, and I don't know that that's the best option on the wheels, because the rest of the bike is so damn impressive. I don't think the wheels are even a variable as far as it needing those to be light to perform well. I think if anything, with the weight the weight of the bike, the power of the bike, just make sure those things are durable.
Part of it's a balance to strike, though, too, right? Because you need to look at what your target audience is, or your target market, right? So most of the guys buying this bike aren't going to be going pro speed. They're not going to be racing Supercross, and they're not racing nationals. So is it better off to have a lighter weight wheel that maybe wouldn't hold up to somebody at pro level, or at least not for as long for a regular consumer? I don't know. I'm just throwing questions out because that's something that they have to factor in. Because for the record, mine, I haven't had a failure on my wheels, but I have had to chase spokes a lot. And you saw that every time I was coming off the track, I was having to tighten spokes and check everything. It's too early to say if that continues. I mean, no matter what, when you get a new bike, usually you're chasing spokes the first ride. That's like pretty standard. If that stops, no problem. If that keeps happening, then maybe I need a little bit stronger wheel set or something. So I think the jury's still kind of out on that.
Yeah, and it goes. There's a give and take on having someone who's more of an amateur or weekend warrior. Like a weekend warrior, if wheels are on the ground, wheels are on the ground. Like then this does not pertain to you. But if you're going to the track and jumping, even me, I suck at jumping. I'm not the guy to go jump anything. You know, I'm always like, Silvera's coming up this weekend, right? He invited me to go to his buddy's compound. He's like, hey, dude, you should come check it out. I'm going to go. We're going to free ride this and that. And I go and I was like, go watch or go ride? And he's like, all gaps. You're sitting and watching this one, buddy. Like, you know, I was like, oh, thanks for the heads up. And I wasn't even offended. I was glad that I got a quick response so I didn't get my hopes up. But I'm not the guy to jump anything. That being said, when I do jump stuff, sometimes I come up short. Sometimes on my 125, I don't overjump anything.
I don't know if I've seen you overjump anything.
Kicker maybe. But what I'm getting at though is when you make mistakes, like a pro, like how often do you see Josh Hill have a rough landing without crashing? Not that often. He backsides pretty smooth. Him and his brother got like great timing, and those are two dudes that they're not very hard on their equipment. Like guys that are jumping big stuff, a lot of times they're really really good. In Supercross, you have the whoops. In outdoors, you have the speed and the kickers and everything like that. So like that's where you get a lot of the force on the wheels. But the jumping part, a lot of the guys got really good timing. So the thing I would worry about is with the bike being so intuitive that I felt if I get comfortable with how it feels in the air, I could jump that a lot easier than I could jump my 125. But I also feel there's plenty of power where I could overjump something, no problem. Or if I'm getting the courage to jump something that I wouldn't necessarily jump on my bike, you know, and I start working up to that, I might case it a couple times, or I'm not going to be as smooth. And that's where I'm getting at. It's in that middle ground. That's where you start seeing a lot of abuse on equipment. And then you have me not being, maybe I'm not, or the average Joe isn't up to snuff on checking their spokes consistently and all that. You know, those pros, if you look at them, their mechanics are always checking their spokes, you know, and so like there's all of these little factors when you start peeling back the layers of what it could be. Not to go in on 20 minutes on freaking wheels, but it's something that caught my eye, and I want to kind of keep my eye on that one because the wheels, like I said, were a little they just seemed like they saved a lot of weight on them, and I'm not sure if that was necessarily the right direction. But it's the easy part is you can source wheels. That's an easy thing to remedy, no problem. You know.
I mean, I guess also on the safety topic, though, when we do kind of do that transition to electric bikes, there's a lot less to go wrong. I mean, how many guys every season do we have that had some undisclosed preseason crash or something? Sometimes they don't say if it was a bike failure or not. We don't know. Yeah. But there's always a few bike failures, right? I mean, there's a lot. Could it still happen with electric? Yes, it could. But there's exponentially less parts that can go boom in there. You know, those motors are pretty simple. Aside from some weird controller faults or something that generally doesn't happen. I haven't really seen it happen in the air.
No. There's no load occurring in the air.
Yeah,
so
it's unlikely
the controller's not stressed at that time.
Yeah. What are failures that you'd have with electrical components?
Sure. So there's first and foremost, you would be concerned about battery failures. Not that you should be, but that would be one of the possible failure modes. There's hundreds of cells inside the battery that are all individually fused. For some reason, one of those pops off, you lose a cell in that group, because they have groupings of cells. And I'm sure your bike would throw a fault, and we would have to reach out to Stark to see what it would do in that case. If it were one of our bikes, the bike would keep running, so it wouldn't be detrimental.
Would you lose power?
You would. It would. You probably wouldn't notice any loss of power at that time, but what would happen is the cells would become imbalanced, because you have, like, let's say you have, and this is not about a Stark battery, I'm just throwing numbers out to make it easy to understand. Like, let's say you have 10 banks of 5 cells, and one of the banks is running on 4 cells because you lost one of the, connections. That cell group, parallel group, is going to deplete quicker and have less energy. So it'll get imbalanced, and then that will cause it to cut off prematurely. So you lose battery life. And you're putting a lot of stress on that same bank, those 4 cells that are working, because now they're working, harder to keep up with all the others. So it's not a good thing, but that wouldn't be something that would cause someone to crash, I don't think. So
it's not like a hard failure.
It's not
like
a hard
bike
failure,
blowing up
yeah.
or something.
So you could have battery failures. Inside the battery, there's something called the BMS. That's a battery management system. So that's like your watchdog. It looks at every single parallel group in every series, or it looks at every series group, and it lets you know, Stark doesn't let you know anything. I'm sorry. It's all bottled up inside. Our equipment, you can look at this stuff, but it's watching all of that stuff, whether you can see it or not. And it's making sure your battery is healthy. It knows if it's going out of balance, and if it's going out of balance, something's wrong with it. So it's watching temperatures, it's watching state of charges, it's watching the series groups, it's watching all of that stuff. So the BMS could simply just go out. Just like any computer could just stop booting up one day. Is that likely? No, not really. When's the last time your MacBook just didn't turn on? But it could happen.
It wasn't until they wanted me to get a new one.
I would say the most likely failure on an electric is the controller, where it would be a showstopper. You'd be dead in the water. And the controller it's like a computer. It has hundreds if not thousands of little tiny components inside, diodes and capacitors and microprocessors and all sorts of stuff. And you could blow like a MOSFET, which carries all of the power. And if the MOSFET blows, it's basically game over, or the logic board could crap out or whatever. So, but again, we're leaning on when's the last time your computer didn't turn on? But what I'm talking about would be more similar to if a controller were to blow up through, I will just say the MOSFET, which is basically the part of the controller that carries all the current. That would be like running your gaming PC at full tilt, and then it just one in 1,000 of those graphics cards just gave out because it was trying so hard and it just wasn't a good board or whatever. So that's the only time, because we're not going to expect any of these Starks to just blow MOSFETs on their controller. I'm sure, just like we do, we test all this stuff and engineer it to take way more than what we're demanding from it. So this is very unlikely to happen. But if it did, yeah, it would be a controller issue more than likely, and it would be a showstopper. But I've never seen that on Alta ever. And I don't expect to see that, hardly any failures at all.
That's a thing too I'm curious about, where if you look at engine tuning, it's been on gas bikes, it's been done for so many years that there's parameters of just how the technology works, and the good guys understand that, and they understand the usable power, and then how to keep it within a certain parameter that it's not going to fail. And then if it is going to fail, it's tested so well that they're not going to deny it. And it's more of a, hey, listen, you have X amount of time on this and do not go over.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And they're real about it. And that's where I would say a good chunk of the state of that part of the sport is, right? That being said, when there's new equipment that comes out, you see every once in a while, yeah, we're working on this map or we're working on the setting, and then you see something explode and you're like, oh shit, okay, we're gonna take that back.
Sure.
I'm wondering on if there's gonna be a time where people start messing with the software, kind of just like what you see in gaming. I'm glad you brought that up, where people start overclocking everything. And when I start asking myself these questions, on one end, I almost think that if the software that you have for the bike itself or for the controller if it's intuitive enough, it gives you a range of workable, let's call them your own customized settings or maps or whatever. And it's all in this little play box or sandbox of what's doable without hurting the equipment. And so everybody can control their own, kind of set up the bike the way that they want to, what they think is best, but it's all done in a safe parameter. And if that sandbox is so big that you're not going to use it to its full potential, you know what I mean? So is it necessary for someone to take it and try to do like what you would do to gaming PC, and you overclock it and you just try and get everything out of it, you know, for a short period of time? You know, is that something that we might see down the line, or is it just it's so fast and strong that you really don't even need to go there? Like, that's a part I'm ignorant, but I'm curious, you know, if that's a thing.
Sure.
Or could be a thing, I mean.
So with like the stuff that we're doing where you convert your own bike and you're doing a DIY build and we have our own controller and stuff like that, we have our app. It's very constricted, not in a bad way, constricted to where you can't break it, constricted to where it works the way it's supposed to and stuff like that. But, you know, the back end of that stuff is extremely complicated. That's what I mean by restricted. So you could theoretically sneak in there and turn it up, you know, on something like, you know, what we sell. That'd void your warranty and it might break it, but you could do it. With the Stark, it's probably pretty tough. I'm sure they have it encrypted and, you know, tons of safeguards to prevent you from getting anywhere near the parameters. So I don't think that that's someone really smart would have to spend a lot of time doing that. And it's not impossible, but I don't think that's going to like happen anytime soon, but it could happen. And that's, I guess, somewhat of a concern too, when it comes to trying to make sure the bikes are a certain power level for racing. Then where if someone's hacking into the controller, it's going to get one of those things where we need a way to know what kind of output this bike is having, regardless of what it's telling on the screen or whatever, right? Because who knows? And I would be less concerned about blowing people's stuff up. That's their own deal, I guess. They'd maybe they'd be upset. They'd be excited they broke into it until it broke. Like, actually, you know,
it's a lot of money, dude.
Yeah, exactly. And, but then like, you know, just like we were talking before the podcast started about, like, it's not explicitly against the rules. So therefore, like, you know, and so, it's definitely something to consider, you know, we need to come up for racing in the future. I think there's going to need to be some kind of way to measure the power output of these bikes. And that way, you know, those kinds of jailbreaking, if you will, since everyone understands that term, is not going to become an issue. That would be something you do for fun, not something that'd become problematic, you know?
And I almost feel like is it even necessary? Because the platform itself is so good.
Yes.
That, like, I would look at it like, my ass ain't gonna need any more out of it. You know what I mean? So
100%.
That's I'd almost want to, like, see what you think, Josh, on Do you think that's something down the line that people are going to want to get into because they're going to want more out of it?
I think that might happen on like lower tier bikes, as we see. Like, it's probably not going to happen on a Stark because that's already, I mean, 80 horse. I don't know who's going to be able to ride that effectively. But you might see it on, let's say Honda or somewhere, or another manufacturer comes out with like a line of bikes that are comparable. Like they say, hey, this one's comparable to a 250F and it costs $3,000 less than our 450 equivalent or whatever. Now somebody might be tempted to say, oh, I'm going to jailbreak this controller and get that 450 for $3,000 less. You know, that's where the temptation would probably come, would be my guess.
So would that be, then that could be similar to, like isn't there a 60 horsepower version of the Stark?
Yes. Yeah.
So
you can either buy
60
the 60 horsepower or the Alpha, which is the 80.
Yeah. So that would, I think, the only...
Totally, yeah. So I don't
place.
know if there's physical differences. I believe I was told there was, but yeah, I'm not sure about that. But yeah, I could imagine someone buying a 60 horse bike and then being like, yeah, I'm going to get around this. But it's like I said, though, we're like living in a fever dream right now because that is not easy.
Yeah.
They have it locked way down. So... I don't know.
Just pony up and buy the 80.
Yeah, just buy it, man.
That's what I told Josh.
But to what you said, though, if you make it right, it does everything you want it to do. It's plenty powerful enough. There's no reason to waste your time with that. So, this stuff's all new. I'm sure, someone like Stark, or especially with like Electro and Co., like when customers reach out to us and say, hey, I would really like it if we had this feature. That would be cool. If it's a legitimately good suggestion, we take that pretty seriously. And a lot of times that stuff makes it into the app. Stark's still a fairly small company. They're still taking a lot of opinions right now from customers. If we need something on the app, I would encourage people to contact them and very politely and nicely. That's the important part. Express that you'd like this function, and if you're not the only one saying it, it might make it in there, and then this need to jailbreak stuff doesn't need to happen, right? So because from my point of view, I don't want people trying to jailbreak my controllers. That's just going to end up to a broken controller and like a headache and for them and me, and it'd be better if I just work with my software engineers to give them the things that they're looking for if we don't have it. Yeah, so that's the cool thing with electric. It's not like you're stuck. Like, you buy a car and then it's like, that's the car. Yeah. You buy like a True Moto kit from us, or you buy a Stark, the bike gets better, the kit gets better, the controller gets better with time, because as with electronics, all it needs is a software update. There's hardware limitations, of course. I can't just magically make it carry more current, but I can potentially change many of the software or feature aspects of it to the end user and allow, do all kinds of things that it didn't do before. So you can gain features, modes, all kinds of stuff after purchase, probably for free. So it's kind of a cool thing with electric, equipment in the power sports industry, is like you buy something and then it like gets better over time, and it usually is not going to cost you anything unless someone else comes up with like a Tesla model where they charge you for your heated seats or whatever. I hope people don't start doing that, but
yeah, it gets more and more refined. I mean, if you're open to the constructive criticism and want the feedback,
totally,
then you're getting the best data that you can ask for, because these are the people that are buying your stuff. Totally. So they're invested. They're skin in the game. All they want is for it to be a better experience for them. And so, like, what more could you ask for? It's a very clear suggestion, or
right,
a clear direction to go to. And
right.
then that's the thing. So while we're on the subject, I'll just politely say, Stark, I think you did a very good job with the overall design of the bike and the package. That don't need to worry about the wheels weight so much. You can go with something strong and durable, because that thing's so badass. And I think if anything, it's a monster, and it needs some wheels that match how badass the rest of the bike is.
But see how you went about that? That was good. You didn't go and say, your wheels suck, they're too light, right?
No,
you said, hey, we noticed some things, and we think maybe, in our opinion, this could be a benefit, right? You're more likely to be taken seriously that way.
Yeah, well, I could understand why you go that direction. Like, weight is... Dude, this is stuff that I learned in dealerships, and whether there's stuff that ends up on bikes for production to hit a certain weight, that if you go look at OEM original equipment, like when it comes to a tire, when it comes to, or even when you're going to separate function forks and one's hollow and one's not, you know, there's a lot of crazy stuff that goes into bikes to hit a specific weight. When weight becomes, oh, this is the lightest bike, this is the lightest bike, and all the magazine reviews, like people, I don't know if anybody gives credit, but those bike shootouts, a lot of people take that serious, you know, and that's going to help you sell bikes. And the better you do in one of those,
yes,
the whether it's reality or not, it's a couple guys' opinion, really, and it's a human opinion. At the end of the day, those shootouts are they're very valuable for you to come out on top. And so when there's a trend where like, well, this is the lightest bike, well, this is the lightest bike, and this is and then you see almost like a little competition to who could make the lightest equipment, and it's like, fuck it, dude, let's just take the spring out of this fork, we'll do it, set it up this way, and then
we don't even need springs.
Yeah.
Let's use air.
Yeah, you know,
that doesn't weigh anything.
and then and then it goes that way, and it's like, yeah, we could kind of get it to work, and then you got a race team that has to try to use it, and then it's like, and then some guys, they're like, wow, this is great, but that's like one guy, and then everybody else is like, just leave the springs in, and then you get all that stuff. Anyways, what I'm getting at is, I get it if you are concerned about weight. The weight, a lot of times, if, like you're saying, if you did it right, you didn't even notice. That's just a number.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter.
Exactly.
And I think that on the bike, just at least from my experience, they did it right. And I would, the first thing I would do is I would just put those badass wheels I got on my helmet.
The one thing you noticed was the wheels, right?
There you go.
So
look at you go.
Yeah, but I mean, to what you said though, the whole chasing the weight thing or chasing the max horsepower thing, and like I call it paper racing. Yeah. We deal with this a lot in the electric industry, where we work really hard to make it have all those nuanced feelings that you're looking for, and ride a certain way and feel a certain way and perform a certain way, and then, you know, you might be compared to like something that, you know, makes more kilowatts or more horsepower, and but that thing rides like a forklift. But like on paper though, you're losing. So it's a very difficult place to find yourself as a company when you're trying to develop something, because you need to hit those paper metrics, and then you have to complete the mission of all the stuff that you can't really like write down. It's like becomes like a verbal thing or an opinion based thing, where the paper racing is like, well, no, this number is lower than this number, therefore you lose. But it's not that's not necessarily true at all, which is basically what you're saying.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a difficult, as a manufacturer, you find yourself in a difficult place where you're like, no, it's better, I swear. Don't look at the paper. Just ride it. And everyone's like, yeah, okay, guy, you know, and you're like, okay.
You're trying to get people, especially a brand new company, you're trying to get people on the damn bike. And it's controversial too.
Right.
It's the other thing. And so it's just like, and then, yeah, I guess you look at it, what's the first downside that anybody can point out? It's like when they look at the stats, they're like, this thing's 30 pounds heavier.
This thing's heavy.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah, I get it.
So they're like fighting for every fraction of a pound, where the original weight was like 240 and some change. Mm-hmm. And then they waited till the last second to be like, well, actually, it was... well,
they had to add another P row of battery, right?
I don't know exactly anymore what was the full reason, but I believe they added some battery to it. That's a speculation on my part right now. But yeah, so I believe they added some battery to it, which is probably a good idea.
Yeah.
But that added a little bit of weight.
Put a little gas in the tank.
Yeah, we had to fill up a little bit. Yeah, so, yeah, but you wrote it. I wrote it. Josh has wrote it. Many people are riding. Lots of pros are riding it, and the weight isn't an issue. The bike's awesome.
No,
so
isn't that crazy how it feels? Like I said, when I get on a 450, I get tired very quick. Part of it probably be my nerves. The other part of it just be like it feels like a handful.
A 450 is like a hammer, and if you're not a guy who swings a hammer every day, your arm gets tired.
You know what I think?
You know,
when I get on a 450, I got my buddy Derek Vandergraff, Don. He's all, "Hey, boy, what you doing?" Like, he's like, "You want to take my ride out?" We're at Hangtown. Like, I don't know. He's all, "Come on, man, you need it." He's like, "Go on. He ain't gonna do nothing to it. I ain't already done." He's like, "You can piss on that thing, knock it over, whatever." All right. So I go in, I get on it, and I rode. And like first lap, all I could think is like, how the fuck does Eli Tomac just hold this thing wide open? Like,
right.
I'm just like,
totally.
Oh my God.
Totally.
You know, because I've rode 450s like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're completely different now.
Yeah.
You know, so much more power and like ridiculous.
Gnarly.
You know, and I come back in and then Don's just like, "It's a bad fucking rig right there, ain't it, boy?"
I feel like for like amateurs like us, you have to be very deliberate with your riding because we're not good enough to just hold it wide like Eli, right?
Yeah.
So my approach, and it's actually kind of similar on the Stark, is if I'm riding my 2-stroke or something, I can kind of wick it and not worry about stuff so much. On the 450 or a more powerful bike like that, you need to be smart about how you're riding it. You need to say, okay, I'm going to brake here, and this way I'm going to take this line, I'm going to get on the throttle here and be smooth with your movements because it's not as forgiving. And the Stark is forgiving because it's so smooth, but it's still, you do have that kind of weight, so you need to be methodical with what you're doing. Like, I feel like trying to ride a Stark, I feel like an electric bike like a Stark's going to fit someone like Jet Lawrence better than it's going to fit someone like Barsha, just riding style-wise. That's my opinion. I could be proven completely wrong at some point, but that's kind of the sense that I get.
Yeah. It definitely, I mean, it made me feel like Jet Lawrence. Like I was just gliding over all the bumps and everything, and it's kind of not getting sucked down into ruts or anything like that. Probably because I was going around them, but no, it's definitely way easier to ride. And like I said, anybody that's still listening to this, if you get a chance, if you see someone, I don't know, don't go up to a stranger and ask them to ride their bike. But if you have a friend or somebody that has a Varg and they're willing to let you try it out, like I honestly think it's such a cool bike that if I had one, I would be excited for people to try it because it's a completely different thing. Like nobody's riding my 125. Like you can all go to hell. Like you're not, get away from, don't even look at it. You know what I mean? But if I had a Stark, like you can absolutely take that thing out because it's just such a unique, cool feeling. Like it's
funny you say that because I've had, like I said, I've had the Alta. I do the whole electric thing as obviously it's Electro Co, but ever since I had the Alta, way before I was doing anything business related, I was like, you should try it. And I'm, generally I'm pretty the guy that doesn't mind anyway, but it's like I want you to try it. It's a different feeling. Like with your gas bike, you're like, nah, man, I don't want you to like cause some
don't blow it up.
Yeah, some like maintenance catastrophe that I don't want to deal with, Yeah. But with the electric, unless they like majorly dump it, you don't have to worry about anything, their riding style or any like their goonness or anything like that. As long as they can keep in control, then it's really no consequence to the bike, and so you get to give people that experience and get to see the look on their face, and like that, to me, it's rewarding because I like to I guess to think that I help change their mind or like educate them a little bit on just like how it actually is good. Because I think that that's things that people are uncertain about. They're like, is it really that good? And I'm like, you should try it. Yeah. You should try it and then you'll see.
That's the best. That's the best approach too. Because you don't, instead of having to explain anything, it's like, bud, right here's your
just go feel it.
Yep.
It's kind of like when you first start riding or just riding in general, you're like, man, how does everybody not do this? This is cool, right?
Yeah.
Like you want everyone to experience what you're experiencing because it's so fun and it's so awesome. So you're coming at it from a perspective of, I want you to feel this too because I like it a lot and it's cool,
Yes.
That's kind of your motivation. And even just looking at the bike, the build quality on stuff is so nice. Like me being an engineer, I geek out on that stuff. I look at, their tool path for this machining was really cool. Like that, like just dumb stuff like that, And like I want other people to see that too, comparing to like any other regular 450 or something or one of the more established brands. And then you look at the Stark and the fit and finish and the build quality that they did on it. Like, it's fun for me to point those things out to people. I'm like, oh, look at this, look at that, you know, just because that's what I geek out on.
Yeah, like even the bodywork, like the spacing's consistent everywhere, and then that I don't know what that switch is on the left. I would call it a kill switch. Yeah, that one.
Yeah,
dude, that it's all billet and badass, and like you look at it, that's the part, that's the spaceship part right there. It's like that looks like some sci-fi movie stuff, but it's pretty sweet. And then you got the carbon. I was gonna call it the ram air intake, but I don't know if that's just for cooling or what that is, or if it's just sick. But you got the carbon up top.
To crushed carbon with the real gold.
Is that real gold?
The Stark logo is real gold, yeah.
That's real gold.
It's actual real gold. Yeah.
I mean, it's probably paper thin, but you get to say that,
sick.
you know. Yeah. 24 karat, you know.
I have
it's like you know, you got to go there. I mean, when he was talking about the machine path, you know how many times I've pointed out how well machined the bar clamps are? Like, they're awesome. I pointed out, people are like, huh. And I'm like, so me and Josh just geek out on stuff like that. But every single detail on the bike is way higher than anything out. So that part of it makes you feel good. Like, it's a lot of money, you know, so it's hard to justify. But then when you get it in your hand, you're like, worth it. Totally worth it. They went there.
It makes riding fun again. Yeah. And not that it's not already fun, but it makes it so much fun. Anything that you can do that keeps that enthusiasm high. Yeah,
you know, when you look back at your car after you park it, it gives you that. It totally gives you that. You're just like, God, it's so good and beautiful in every way. Yeah, so you're just like, gotta like look at your bike a couple more times. You're doing that breaking your neck as you're walking away from it in the pits. Like, you're just trying to go get a soda, man. You know, you just can't stop to help yourself from turning around.
I'm just thinking about all those corny like romance movies when they finish their first date. They're like walking back, looking at each other. What was it? There was one with Brad Pitt. I think it's called Meet Joe Black.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah.
Bro, you haven't seen it, but
how old is this movie?
It's your age. And so Brad Pitt meets this girl and they start talking and all this stuff and everything's going great. And it's just like, you know, like it's like the best feeling in the world, like when you meet somebody and you're into them and you can tell they're into you and you're just like, I don't know, maybe they had their first kiss or something. It was like first date, first kiss kind of thing. And they're just like happy. And it's like that fucking cool feeling. And he's like looking back and he keeps walking. He goes to this intersection. He looks back at her and he walks in the intersection, looks back one more time.
Yes.
Bro, it's the most horrific, violent car crash. Like, he gets hit by a car and another car comes the opposite direction. His body lands on that car and then like splats against the freaking truck. Like, I don't know why I just thought about that. When he's talking about that look that you give when you look back at your bike. Hey, check it out on YouTube. Yeah, it's the most brutal.
Hopefully that's not like some kind of premonition.
That shit made me cry.
Okay, basically, it's don't YouTube. Break your neck because you could be in danger, right? You gotta make sure.
Yeah, don't do that.
If somebody's passing you on the track on a Stark, don't look. Don't be that guy.
Keep your eyes ahead.
Oh my gosh. Well, what's your? We've covered a whole lot on the bike. With your experience, we haven't got a whole lot with as far as you riding. What's your favorite part, or what's something that stands out the most to you since you got your bike?
Sure. So for me, I had mentioned it a little bit earlier. I really like the way that the Stark is a little bit more. The weight bias is back more. So it's more traditional, I would say, than what I'm used to with the Alta, which I've been riding for a long time. And it rotates back a lot easier. So I'm really like a enduro trail, guy, and rocks, logs, this kind of obstacles, and being able to get the front up at low speed and control that and have balance with at the pivot point at a low speed. Almost impossible on an Alta. Like, you're dragging that thing up.
It's almost whale breaching.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're trying to balance like a broomstick on your hand with the heavy end at the top. And so once it's up, it's not so precise or easy to deal with. Whereas with the Stark, I feel like, you know, I can get that thing up really easy, pivot turn it, you know, tight wheelie circles and stuff. And where with the Alta, it was really difficult to do that. And that was like my favorite thing to do. So it's like a major buzzkill. Because like a YZ250 with an 18 on it, like that's like wheelies in third gear, no problem. Like you're fighting it to keep it down, which is fun. I don't know if it's the fastest thing in the world, but they're super fun. And I lost that with the Alta. Like, yeah, it handled great and everything, but like you really, like on an Alta, if you smack the throttle, it just doesn't burn out. It doesn't want to do a wheelie at all. Like you really got to like lean into it back hard. And that, I adjusted to it, but moving to the Stark, it doesn't have that at all. It's really, it'll rotate back exactly how you would expect it to. Not too much, not too little. So that's definitely the most enjoyable part about riding it, is that it gets up on the pivot point and balance is really good. So when I want to place that front wheel on a log, and it's like a laser. I'm just like right there, boom, boom. And I don't have to like pull it up with all my strength, which is what I'm having to do with the Alta. So, you know, the 260 pounds it's managed well to where
it wears it well.
It wears it well, yeah. To where, you know, I feel a lot more in control of the bike in those enduro situations. I have to apply a lot less effort as well. So for me, that it's a huge improvement for the type of riding that I do.
One of the cool things I noticed was, because you can't hear, all you hear is a whine of the motor, which is it's pretty cool. But dude, going into some corners, or like if you land and you slide a little bit, if you've ever done any downhill mountain biking at speed and you get that and you hear your tires sliding, that is freaking weird on a dirt bike.
Yes.
And you can hear everything that's going on with the tires, which is, it's cool, but it's weird that took me a little getting used to. I kind of got a kick out of that because I never thought I would be able to hear like what the tires do.
Sure.
Like you could it wasn't as smooth on the brake. Like he's got the foot brake on his, and so like I think I stabbed it just to see what it feel like, you know, because I'm like, I'm not going to stall it, so I stabbed it going into a corner, or you're in the back.
Yeah,
it's pretty
it
cool.
lets you know pretty quick, huh?
Yeah, honestly, I would probably get more. I would be more attuned to what's going on. That it would be another. You lose some of that sensation,
totally,
and it becomes muted. So if you can hear it and it's an audible thing, you can almost correct it before it gets through the chassis.
Totally.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, I got a kick out of that. Like that was the weirdest thing I could say I felt on that. It wasn't bad. It was pretty interesting.
For a split second, did you feel like you had a flat at any
No.
time? Yeah, I would say that's probably one of the things that happens when you ride electric is you get like, so you feel like you have a flat.
Really?
You hear like this noise, like, that sounds like I'm riding on a flat. But it could just be like the ground is soft and your nubs are just puncturing the terrain and then popping out. And so it gives you like that little, you know, like a very weird sound. And you're like, it's just feeling like it's giving you that audio cue, like your tire's flat, you know? And you look back and you're like, no. And you get used to it, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely like more information.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like I could see where it's again another little small advantage. But it was the weirdest thing, just hearing your tires moving around, and like, whoa, that's
when we're hill climbing them, because it's only one bike at a time unless we're doing verticross, you really hear it. Because you're fighting for grip, especially if you hit like a hard pack or a rocky spot. It's just you on that hill, so you hear all of that, and it's almost easier to modulate the throttle because you can hear like, oh, I'm breaking loose, and like let off a little bit, you know? So it's kind of interesting.
The more information gets into your brain, whether or not you feel like you're processing it, you are. And I think that it helps, right?
the sensory stuff. Not a technical guy telling you, hey, this is what's happening.
Totally.
That shit'll make you overthink, like, oh, is this what's happening? But
totally.
Like if you're having to decipher it in the moment yourself,
right.
I think that's good. You know, I don't think if I was going to tell somebody that your bike is doing this at this degree and blah blah blah, and it's gonna be like, I would freaking tuck the front right into the first corner.
Tuck the front, son.
That's funny. this property up here is pretty rad. I got a kick out of coming and seeing all the livestock and whatnot. I know it's getting dark right now, but I want to take a hot lap at some point. And I don't know about with your guard dog.
No, he's fenced off. We got a whole mountain over there.
He said he's 7 months old and he's bigger than any Labrador already.
Yes,
for sure.
Yeah,
and there's. I mean, what kind of dog did you say?
He's a Kangal or
Kangal.
Anatolian Shepherd is the more correct name.
People could Google that. Those things they're like I don't know. They're like a superhero character. When they're out in the field.
He definitely has that look to him, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're pretty rad. Well, actually, you know what? We should bring him with us if we go walking around at night.
Dude, so yeah, it's a real thing. California foothills up here, right on the tree line, basically. Like we're right on the snow line. Right on the snow line.
Tree line's like mammoth.
Okay. Yeah. My mistake. Yeah. So we're right on the snow line, and tons of trails around here. We purchased property to help, Electro and Company have a place to do R&D because we were in the city. I would have been renting a building, and then I'd be stuck in the city where I'm unable to really test the product to their fullest extent, or really any extent, to be honest with you. So that's the whole purpose of all of this, and it's been a huge change of pace for us, but it's fantastic to be able to walk out of the front door, go down to the shop, work on the bikes, test ride them, put them through our test loop. It's huge acceleration to everything that we're doing. And then on top of it, it's a fun experience. I highly encourage anyone that's thinking about escaping the city to pursue your dream and just make it real, because I'm loving every second of it. And if you're a dirt bike guy or anything like that, it's just like totally, it's worth every headache and struggle that I've gone through, with all this. Because let's be real, totally worth it. And I'd love to take you out for a ride. We got a bunch of really cool stuff, and we will be doing events here our electric only events.
Oh wow!
In the future, and that's we're building the infrastructure here out to accommodate that. That's kind of part of the vision, is to have a destination maybe a couple times a year, not like an every day thing, but have tons of cool attractions and nice track with a hair scramble loop attached to it. And in order to do that, it's a lot of work, but I feel like it just brings just another venue for the electric bikes to, get down at, and people can come ride and test out our stuff, or, it's a lot of work though. It's a lot of work.
I'm driving in.
Yeah. We're out here.
Knowing what it is to keep shit afloat. When we were coming in, I was just looking at everything like, damn, that would suck. This is awesome, but damn, that's a lot of responsibility. Yeah. And it's makes sense to have the goats to keep all the brush down, and plus they're rad. But then Josh was telling me every once in a while, a mountain lion will snag one. It's just dude, that would crush me.
You just got me back on track. I tangented. That was the whole point of where I was going, is that major adjustment is you're out in the woods and everything, and you go camping, and there's oh, we saw a bear. I'm I live in camping. There's mountain lions out here, man.
Yeah. And
it's not you get to avoid them for 2 days and go home.
They're here. Bears are the stoners of the forest, because they're the little the black bears. They're totally stoners, because they're just kind of digging through your trash and stuff, or licking the grill and hey man, you got any snacks? You sure you don't have any chips or nothing? Or they're oh, you don't have no problems.
No big deal.
Yeah, then they go and yell at them and they take off. But it's just the cats. The cats are what scare me a little bit.
Munched a few goats, and it sucks because the goats are livestock, but you go attached, and you don't want anything to happen to the animals. Yeah. So you do your best to protect them, but that's what we got the Kangal for, and but we're up there on the top of the mountain, the far side of the property, and we're hanging out in our tree, which has got a 50-foot web 5-story tree house thing in it, which overlooks where the track will be. So it's part of the kind of a grandstand sort of vibe to it. But we're up there hanging out, having a good time after work, and it's dark, and we just hear the cat cry, like, gotta be like 200 yards, like 150 yards, like close enough to where you're like, dude. Yeah, so it's a thing. Like,
was it like a screech or was it a cry? Or...
Yeah, they make like this like screeching sound. Yeah,
like there's I've heard a couple that are horrifying, like that.
Sounds like a baby crying or something like that.
No, like a loud, like the type that you see in old Western movies. You know, the soundboard that they use for like a puma or something like that kind of stuff.
It is a little bit like that.
I've heard that in person up in Courtright Reservoir in Central California, and that was terrifying hearing that because it was that. I have no idea how close it was, but it was close enough. I heard it. That's how close it was.
Sure,
sure. It was that was terrifying, but I couldn't imagine like. Yeah, you got that. And how many acres do you have out here?
It's a 40 acres on the mountain. So
okay.
The cool thing about living on a mountaintop, especially for like dirt bike riding, is if you have a 40-acre plot, you got to think of like it doesn't account for elevation change. So like if you take like a tissue paper and drape it over a mountain and then flatten it out, it gets a lot bigger.
Gotcha.
So it's 40 acres.
So the surface area isn't accounted for. It's just the overall over the
bird's
top.
eye view.
Yes.
Totally. So for us, it feels like a lot more than that. So it's really sweet from the aspect of like making trails and dirt biking. If you were like a normal person that didn't dirt bike, I think it'd be basically like unusable land.
Yeah.
So anyone thinking about getting land and loves dirt biking, like the hills are like desirable because it's like expands your land without expanding it and then gives you somewhere to ride rather than being flat.
That's cool.
So it's but even just the whole 40 acres bit, it's like 20 years of deferred maintenance from the old owner and just trees falling everywhere, and we have to like pick them up and cut the trails in and hang up signs and don't go off trail because you're gonna run over my poppies, and and it sounds lame and everything, but it's a lot of work, but it's 100% rewarding work though. So yeah, I can go on and on. I'm like romanticizing my own situation here. I love it. Yeah,
it's awesome. It's like
Josh knows. I tell him all the time. He's like, dude, stop. So.
I'm kind of butthurt at Josh.
I'm jealous.
I feel like Josh has been holding out because he never once has said, oh dude, this place is cool, you got to go check it out. He's been all,
it's not my place.
I know.
I mean,
it's in progress. It's in progress. I always feel like it could be cooler every time someone comes. I'm like, no, just wait, man. We're not even done yet. It's like I feel like I'll probably feel like that forever though.
Yeah.
Well, I also don't want to be the guy that's like, hey, I invited this dude to your house.
Yeah, I'm lonely up here, man. You guys got to come up and visit.
Meanwhile, who did he bring up the mountain, and where are we at? I don't want to be the guy, but I'm the guy.
I'm lonely up here, man. I don't get out. I work a lot trying to run ANC, and so I love visitors. I love people to come up and ride. So,
do you go into town very much or no?
You have to, but not like I try not to.
Gotcha.
It's pretty far. Yeah.
Yeah. The driveway is what makes it feel.
Yeah,
far.
exactly.
That's the one.
You're 15 minutes off a main road.
Yeah, that's the part where I'm like
on a private driveway. Yeah.
Getting here is pretty cool. I think livestock's really cool. I love animals and I love land. Yeah, I like this kind of stuff is like that's right up my alley. You know what I mean? And I didn't grow up in a big city or anything. I spent I grew up in a small town and then lived in Fresno for a while, which is a big enough city. It's pretty cool, but the foothills were always right there.
Yeah.
And immediately, like, this is where I always spent all my time. That was my thing. And it's kind of been my dream to come up to, like, a place like this is, like, badass.
You can make it happen.
Yeah.
And there are little hidden gems. I'm not going to tell too many people.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, but there's some hidden gems in California. Not everything is $1 bazillion for now.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, so it can be done. Like this property, if you were looking at it like as if you're in the Bay Area, it would be absurdly expensive. Here it was something that I could make happen, and it wasn't nearly as expensive as you might think.
That's
so
awesome.
Basically what I'm saying is don't give up. There's places in California, just you have to figure it out on your own. That's
good that it landed in the hands of someone who wants to do cool shit with it though. not someone that wants to make it all
appreciate that.
lame. Yeah,
I appreciate that.
Like my buddy. My buddy Blaine always says that, like, what's the point of being rich if you ain't even gonna do nothing tight? He's like, what are you gonna do with all the money? You just sit on it?
Yeah,
you're just gonna build little steps of money, like blocks and steps of money up to your bed so you can step on it.
Scrooge McDuck, dive into your coin vault.
Yeah, exactly. I think we covered majority of anything that I could think to cover on, what it was like to ride a Varg and some stuff with the electric stuff. It's one of those things where it's easy to be like, was like on South Park when they're like, you do good jobs, like that kind of whole deal. It's so easy to be that way, and like I'm never gonna get rid of my 125, and I'll always ride that thing. But damn, like I can't wait to down the line. I want to get an electric bike. Just there's the same way I have a street bike, the same way I have a dirt bike. I think electric bike's gonna be its own badass thing.
It's totally its own thing. Yeah, it doesn't detract from.
No,
it doesn't detract from the gas.
Yeah,
in my mind, it's like a different tool, right?
Yeah,
you don't like throw away your flathead because you got a Phillips,
Exactly.
So
exactly.
Yeah, they're both screwdrivers. So, yeah, no, 100%. I think we got to get this guy hooked up with a YZ conversion, dude. That might be the move.
I agree.
Yeah. We're really excited about that. So
it's going to be a cool kit. I mean, we probably can't give a whole lot of details on it yet, or however much you want to give, I guess, but it's going to be a really cool kit. I'm excited for it.
Is it the YZ conversion like what he rode?
No, this is for the 2018 to 2022 YZ 450F chassis.
Okay.
Or the 19 to 23 YZ 250F chassis.
The perimeter frame, it gives it the ability to have more battery capacity, right?
Totally. Exactly. Whenever you're doing a conversion, or at least what we found, starting with a perimeter aluminum frame is definitely the way to go versus a single backbone.
Yep.
You can drop the battery in from the top. You have a lot more headroom to add battery. And the nice thing with the Yamahas is the way their frame's designed with the fuel tank kind of under the seat in the middle of the bike. That's just more room for battery. So those chassis in particular are really well suited to doing a conversion.
Yeah. And so piggybacking off of what he said is one of the bazillion reasons why I'm really excited about this particular conversion, why we've chose this chassis. That moves the weight away from the front and back underneath the rider. So with like a lot of conversions, you're stuck with all the weight in the front. It's not like a Stark or an Alta where you have complete design, control over the design. You're stuck with whatever you have. So with the YZ, we're allowed to move that weight back. Is the battery weight, which is most of the weight, and some of that weight can be moved more centralized. So we're going to have really good weight bias. It's going to be bolt right on, no cutting, none of that, all billet. And you're going to get 250F performance, hot swappable batteries. You should be able to make a moto no problem. Be a lot lighter than a Stark. It'll be a different weapon, another different screwdriver.
I got tons of screwdrivers.
So, yeah.
I have a screwdriver. Rusty Holland knows exactly what screwdriver I'm talking about. He's got the same one. I have a screwdriver that I will 100% get in a fight in the pits if you try and take it. Like 100, don't take that. And it's probably the cheapest, shittiest one I got, but it's perfect. It's perfect for checking rebound. Perfect.
Grandpa Mouzakis' hammer, Josh has this hammer that it's his grandpa's, and it's got his name, it's got Mouzakis written into it. And the other day when we were out riding, our buddy locked his keys in his van and he had to break the window. This is a wild story, but he had to break the window to get into the van, and we stood there for an hour trying to figure out any other solution other than hammer the window, which we didn't even have a hammer, or at least I didn't know we had a hammer. But nope, old faithful Grandpa Mouzakis hammer to the rescue. Busted that window out, no problem. Thanks, Gramps. So
it's like I always tell people at the track if they're trying to set their sag or something, I have the shock punch on my hammer. I'm like, you can steal the shock punch, don't take my hammer.
That's so funny. Oh, I had one last technical question.
Okay.
When you ride an electric bike, what is it that gets hot?
All of it.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yeah, so when so let's start with the battery, right? So when you the battery has hundreds of cells inside. They have a certain rating. They can allow a certain amount of energy out, and stay within their thermal threshold. So the more you demand from it, the hotter they get. So the battery can get hot. The battery management system that passes current could potentially get hot. Depends on the setup. Then the controller could get hot because it's also passing current. And then the motor can get hot, which is, taking the current and transferring that into usable energy for you to propel you forward. So yeah, it all can get hot because it all comes from the battery. So the source is the battery, and then it's dumping all of that energy into these components, which are basically going to try and take all of that energy and put it to the next component, which would be, the battery to the controller, from the controller to the motor to the wheel, right? So the battery is going to get hot, expending that energy because it can't do it at 100% efficiency. And like, let's say it's, 95% efficient. That 5%, that turns into heat. Then it goes into the controller, and that's not 100% efficient. So any excess from that gets turned into heat, and so on and so forth. So as efficiencies get better, less heat is going to be generated. But that's generally all of it can get hot, and that's because not everything is 100% efficient.
Damn, that sounds like another can of worms to
It
open
is.
on working
Sure.
on efficiency and how does that work. And
Right.
From the engineering side of it, we would call that like an energy balance, basically. So energy in has to equal energy out. So you're not getting, if you put a kilowatt of energy in, you're not going to get a kilowatt of energy out, right? Because of efficiency, but you have to have that energy balance. So that then gets converted into thermal energy, and that kind of makes up your difference. But your energy is always balanced. It doesn't just disappear into nowhere. It gets turned into heat. That's kind of the technical explanation.
Exactly.
does the heat affect the performance of the controller or the integrity of the controller? Or is that typically something that is addressed in the whole overall design? So
100%.
Okay.
Definitely addressed in the design to make sure it stays within its operating temperature range. And if not, then it would, if it's designed right, it will pull power to prevent damage.
Okay.
So it should slow down.
Have any of you guys ran your Stark to zero power yet?
No.
Just to see?
I have not.
And then what do you keep it stored at?
About 50%.
50%?
Yeah. That can be thought of as like, I explain this to customers all the time about batteries, and they're really not that hard to manage. The only thing you don't want to do is leave them full. That's it. And you can think of it like a balloon. If you blow up a balloon all the way, and you let it sit for a few hours or a few days, when you let the air out, then it's like stretched out, like permanently. It's got like wrinkles in it and stuff. You can see it. But if you just blow up the balloon for like a second and then you let the air out, it doesn't deform. So it's a similar concept with the batteries. So if you charge it up all the way, that's fine, but it's not a good idea to leave it fully charged for 3 weeks or 3 months. It'd be better if you leave that, your balloon or your battery half charged, because you're not putting stress on it, and it can easily hold that energy without any stress. So therefore it causes less degradation. So it's very easy concept if you think of it in terms of like the balloon, like I described.
That does make a lot more sense. And so you said about 50% is probably, or that's where you leave yours?
That's where I leave mine. I think 30 to 60 is appropriate.
Gotcha. And then if you're planning on going riding, do you get it up to full charge and then throw it in the truck and then go?
Yeah, I wouldn't be like worried. Mm-hmm. A couple days, you're going to go on a trip, charge it up a day in advance. It stays fully charged for 4 days, whatever, no big deal. Mm-hmm. I just wouldn't make a habit of leaving it like that.
Gotcha.
It's just not a good idea. But is it going to ruin your bike? No. It's just it's gonna put excessive or accelerated, not excessive, accelerated degradation on your battery. So, if Josh left his bike in the garage 100% for a year and I didn't, his bike would hold less charge than mine. It would degrade the battery, yeah.
And then what did you, because I know you had a 220 generator, Josh, at the track. In between motos, like when we were doing the tire change and everything, what was it? It's 20 minutes on the track riding pretty damn good. You said that was about 50% battery?
A little bit more. I think I dropped it down to like 44 or something like that, 43.
And then when you put it on the charger, how long did you charge it off that 220 generator, and how much did you get out of it?
So I probably had it on the charger, I'd say 30 minutes, somewhere around there, because there's time, obviously, like riding to the track, riding back, putting the bike on the stand, getting the generator set up and all that. So we'll say 30, 35 minutes. And that brought it back up to, I think, 85%, somewhere around there, 80%. Enough for me to be able to go out in the next moto and be okay. And it wasn't really a problem.
So do you see that being, if somebody has a 220 generator, do you see it being a problem going and spending a day at the track riding?
I doubt it. I mean, a lot of guys, if they're not timing their motos, I think greatly overestimate their actual track time for the day. I mean, 20 minutes on a track, that's a pretty long time.
It's a long time.
Yeah, like, I'm not a pro racer that trains every day, but I'm in decent shape. You know, I do a lot of activities during the week and stuff, and 20 minutes, like, I'm tired. You know, that's kind of my limit of feeling okay. So, I mean, for most guys doing 20 minutes, especially if you're not going at as high of a rate of speed, you should be totally fine on a 220, I would think.
And then is 110 something that you would even consider, or is that going to be super limited?
Too slow. It's going to, for your house or something, no problem.
Yeah.
Just if you're like, oh, I'm going to charge it the night before, no problem at all. But for a quick charge at the track, you need the 210 or the 220.
Okay. Is there anything else that either one of you would like to make sure that the listeners know about the bike or the interface or your experience with it?
One thing I do hear from people a lot is they're worried about the generators. They're like, I don't want to hear generators all day, this and that, blah, blah, blah. The other option, something that I'm looking to do, is to set up a battery bank inside my van, which will basically be maybe 10 kilowatt hours worth of battery storage in the van that I can charge off of, rather than lug a generator around everywhere and deal with loading in the van, unloading, buying gas. These would just stay in the van and provide power. You can power tools off it, little air compressor, whatever you want to do, and also charge the bike off of. And I would think we're probably going to see some of that, and that might be a good option for people that are worried about having to deal with a generator or don't want to be that guy in the pits running a generator all day long.
Is that something that would charge at the same rate of speed?
Yes.
And will this battery that you're charging, or the battery bank that you're talking about, will that completely deplete at the same rate as the Stark battery charges or reaches capacity?
It should. That has to do with the inverter. I'll let Austin handle that more, though.
So what Josh is talking about is pretty simple stuff. Like, you know, a lot of people do this to their vans already with like solar panels and stuff like that. Like people that live in their van or motorhomes, stuff like that. To answer your question directly, it depends on how many kilowatt hours of battery you're putting in your van. So that's like a variable that you can control. So if the Stark has a
It's a 6.5 or something.
6.5 kilowatt hour battery or something like that. Forgive me, I've forgotten the exact number. But if you put like, you know, a 7 kilowatt hour pack in your van, then it's going to basically deplete in one charge of the Stark, right? But if you put double that, like close to 10 or 12, then you could do it twice.
What I'm asking those is is there a certain point where the charge would, I guess, kind of slow down? Because if I think of this level being here, like if you think of it as liquid, and then as they kind of meet, will it kind of,
like when it hits an equilibrium point?
Yeah, something like that, or just slow the rate, or not having as much of a draw, or I don't know how it works.
I would say no. The inverter should be able to manage that since it's already up converting the voltage. So your voltage would be, you know, starting at like a common voltage would be like 48, but then we're inverting up to 220 already. So you're already boosting that voltage. So it's maintaining that 220 volt all the time, regardless of the input voltage. And then it can draw as much current as it needs. So the answer is basically no. It won't affect the output of the battery bank system as it depletes until it's out. Then it just can't charge anymore.
May have been a dumb question, but I'm sure there's other people.
No,
I have that same exact question.
It's a good question.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
No, That's confidence inspiring though, because it sounds like a good idea to do that. That way people could get their rest.
Yeah, it's definitely a little more convenient.
You don't hear the predator generators just going.
Totally. Yeah. Just trying to save $1,500 on a Honda and just ripping a Predator like 240 decibels in the pits. What? What'd you say?
You're gonna fail sound check at AMA with your generator. That's what they should be doing sound check on, is the freaking generators.
Generator?
Man. Yeah, like bro, like you're B-lot over there.
$14,000 bike rolls up with a Predator 6000 just roaring. Come on, brother.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. All right, I think I'm gonna leave it there on that one. This was badass. I appreciate you taking the time to hang out and let us come check this place out. And
it was fun.
It's rad. And then anytime you want to do another one, I'm sure I'm gonna have more questions. About all this technology, and then also too with the stuff you guys are developing. Sounds pretty exciting.
Let's get you on the YZ. I'd love that.
That'd be rad. Yeah, I'm excited.
It's just about ready. It'll be here at Carnegie. So cool, man.
Badass. Well, cool. Thank you, and we'll do it again.